So picture this. A former FBI director gets indicted by his own government. But this isn't just any indictment. It's a story that really makes you ask some big questions about how independent our justice system actually is. Today, we're going to break down the indictment of James Comey and what it tells us about justice when it's under serious pressure. It all kicked off in late 2025. The Justice Department unsealed an indictment against James Comey, who is, one of the most well-known former law enforcement officials in the country. The announcement itself was a total bombshell. But the real story here isn't just what happened, it's the how and the why. Right away, almost immediately, legal analysts from all over the political map started raising these huge alarms. They were using phrases like political prosecution and a dangerous abuse of power. So what did they see that got everyone so concerned so fast? Let's get into it. To really get what they're talking about, we have to start with the indictment itself. Let's take a look at what Comey was actually charged with, which, on the surface, sounds pretty serious. The official charges basically boil down to two things: making false statements to Congress and obstruction of a congressional proceeding. Now, these allegations go all the way back to testimony Comey gave years earlier, back in 2020. But as we're about to see, the road to actually bringing these charges to a grand jury was, it was anything but normal. And that process, that really unusual path to the courtroom, is where the first major red flags started popping up for legal observers. Take a look at this timeline, because an absolutely wild sequence of events went down in just a few days. It starts with a public demand from the president to prosecute Comey. A little bit later, the career U.S. attorney in that district, Erik Siebert, is pushed out after his office decided there just wasn't enough evidence. And who replaces him? Lindsey Halligan, one of the president's own personal lawyers. And just like that, an indictment is secured. It's that straight line from a political demand to a prosecutorial action that experts are saying is just deeply irregular. And the contrast between the prosecutor who said no and the one who said yes, it's pretty stark. You've got Erik Siebert on one hand, an experienced, Senate-confirmed career prosecutor. His replacement, Lindsey Halligan, had a background in insurance law and, this is the key part, zero prior prosecutorial experience. It really looked like her main qualification was her previous job as a personal lawyer for the president. And on top of all of that, there were some pretty big legal questions about Halligan's appointment itself. See, federal law gives a president a 120-day window to make an interim appointment like this one. After that time is up, the power to appoint actually shifts to the district's federal judges. The argument from a lot of legal experts is that the president already used up his 120 days on Siebert's earlier appointment. And if that's right, it could mean Halligan's appointment is totally invalid, and if that's the case, the entire indictment she secured could just get thrown out. Okay, so we've got the highly questionable process on one side, but then there's the other part of it, the substance of the charges against Comey, which is another huge reason why legal analysts are so concerned. This quote from a really detailed analysis on the Lawfare blog pretty much says it all. It captures the feeling of a lot of legal experts. They don't just see the case as weak. They see it as so fundamentally flawed that just bringing it in the first place is what they'd call an abuse of the system. The indictment itself is just full of holes. For one, it's what's known as a non-speaking indictment, which basically means it's so vague it's hard to even tell what crime Comey is supposed to have committed. Was the alleged lie about his former deputy, Andy McCabe, or his friend Daniel Richmond? The document doesn't actually say. Plus, to get a conviction, prosecutors would have to prove Comey knowingly lied, and that is a very, very high bar. To a lot of people, it just looks sloppily put together. You can really see how weak the case is with this number 14. That was the grand jury vote. Now, you only need 12 votes to get an indictment, so 14 is just squeaking by. For a case this high profile, that is an incredibly thin margin. A vote this close on the pretty low standard of probable cause, well, it signals huge trouble for prosecutors later on when they have to convince a trial jury, unanimously, beyond a reasonable doubt. So when you look at all the political stuff going on and the obvious legal flaws, it's pretty clear what Comey's defense team is going to do to fight back. Their first big move will probably be a motion to dismiss for vindictive prosecution. This argument is basically saying, hey, this case isn't about justice, it's about punishing Comey for his past actions and for criticizing the president, things that are protected by the First Amendment. It's a tough motion to win, but the public record here, it makes this one of the strongest examples of this kind of defense that legal experts have ever seen. Another key defense is selective prosecution. This motion argues that Comey was singled out specifically because he's a political opponent of the president, while other people in similar situations weren't charged.
The whole point is to prove that this isn't the law being applied equally, but that it's a targeted political attack. And the defense's arguments get a lot stronger when you realize that this indictment wasn't just a one-off thing. Nope, it seems to be part of a much larger and very clear pattern. Because just 2 weeks later, the exact same U.S. Attorney's Office indicted another one of the president's major political adversaries, New York Attorney General Letitia James.
And when you put them side by side, the playbook is identical. It's like a carbon copy. It starts with a public demand for prosecution from the president. The same career prosecutor, Erik Siebert, gets pushed out after saying there's not enough evidence. The same new, inexperienced prosecutor, Lindsey Halligan, is brought in. And the result is exactly the same, an indictment. Seeing it like this, it provides some really powerful evidence that there's a deliberate pattern and motive at play here.
So this whole situation brings up these fundamental questions about a core principle of the American legal system, the idea that our justice is supposed to be blind to politics.
This isn't a new idea, by the way. Over 80 years ago, Robert Jackson, who would go on to be a Supreme Court justice, gave this really stark warning. He said that the power to prosecute is immense, and when it's used for malice or for political reasons, it becomes one of the greatest dangers to a free citizen. Ultimately, the case against James Comey is like a major stress test for the guardrails that are supposed to keep law and politics separate. It forces all of us to ask, when those two powerful forces collide with this much intensity, what and who is left to protect the rule of law itself?